Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into something really complex, a relationship pattern that's as fascinating as it is painful, the love triangle. It's a question a lot of us have probably asked at some point. Is it just terrible luck or some kind of personality quirk? Well, we're going to look at a pretty compelling theory from psychoanalysis that says the real answer, it isn't in the here and now. It's actually buried deep in the past. So, to really get to the bottom of this pattern, this psychoanalytic view says we need to rewind the clock way back to childhood, specifically to a key developmental stage that happens between the ages of about 5 and 10. It's called the Oedipal phase, and believe it or not, this is where our story really begins. Okay, so during this really critical time, a kid's experience can kind of go down one of two roads. On one path, you've got a secure family environment, right? The child feels stable, they feel loved, all is well. But on the other path, something can happen that creates what's called an emotional wound. And that sets the stage for all sorts of conflicts later in life.
Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. You are doing important work.
So what exactly is this emotional wound? I mean, what kind of conditions create such a deep, long-lasting conflict in a child's mind? Well, the theory goes that this wound doesn't come from one single, big, dramatic event. It's more about the persistent environment, an atmosphere where the child just feels like their fundamental need for a parent's primary love isn't being met. Maybe the parents were always working, or maybe it was just super obvious their love was directed at each other, or even at a different sibling. And eventually, this feeling becomes the child's reality. It's this painful, inescapable conclusion they come to. And a child's imagination is powerful, right? So they might even magnify their parents' love for each other, making themselves feel even more left out. What this creates is this deep, unresolved hunger to finally, at any cost, be the one who is loved the most. Okay, but let's connect the dots here. How on earth does a wound from childhood lead so directly to adult behavior? How does a feeling you had when you were 7 turn into who you fall for when you're 37? It basically plays out like a cycle, an old script that just keeps getting replayed. Something in the present triggers that old wound, and the adult, without even realizing it, seeks out an existing couple. They then insert themselves into that relationship, and in doing so, they turn it into a stage to reenact that old unresolved drama from their childhood. You've got the mother figure, the father figure, and me. And what's the unconscious goal? It's to finally win this time around, to get the love they felt they lost all those years ago. And, this isn't the only way these patterns get started. Sometimes it's less about feeling excluded and more about, learning a script. I mean, if a child grows up watching one of their parents have an affair, they might just subconsciously absorb that dynamic as normal and replicate it in their own life as an adult. Now, here's the part that's truly fascinating. The person caught in this loop, they're often completely unaware of why they're doing it. The real motivation is buried so deep. So why is that? Why doesn't the person just have a moment of clarity and realize, hey, I'm just repeating the past? The whole answer really comes down to this incredibly powerful defense mechanism our minds have, and it's called repression. It's like the mind's emergency brake. To protect itself from what would be a complete emotional collapse, the mind does something amazing. It takes the conflict, the trauma, the pain, those awful conclusions, and shoves them deep, deep down into the unconscious. And you really have to see this from a child's point of view. For a little kid, this is purely a survival tactic. Think about it. You're totally dependent on your parents. You have zero power to change their relationship. You probably don't even have the words to describe how you're feeling. So when the pain just gets too overwhelming, the psyche steps in and pushes it all out of sight, out of conscious awareness. So this timeline really lays out the whole journey, doesn't it? In childhood, a painful reality is experienced. As a coping mechanism, the mind buries it. But then, in adulthood, that same buried conflict comes back to the surface, not as a clear memory, but as a compulsive, unconscious pattern. What started as a clever way to survive childhood becomes a destructive blueprint for adult relationships. And that leaves us with a final, really challenging question to chew on. If the root of this behavior is buried so deep in the unconscious, if it was literally designed by our own minds to be forgotten, is it even possible to break the cycle? Can it ever truly be changed? Something to think about.
Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you want to overcome betrayal, break toxic cycles, take control of your relationship choices, read How to Deal with a Love Triangle. The link is below the video.